Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Dilli Rouge, and today I'll be reviewing Oytra's signature variant oven baked polymer clay. Please note this is not a paid review and is based on the test package sent to me by Oytra. So let's start with the packaging of this variant. The packaging appears to be very similar to the classic variant. So I'll advise to pay close attention when you are buying this clay and not confuse it with the classic variant. It has a double-layered clear plastic packaging but comes with no blister cover. It does come with an instruction manual with details on how to bake it and how to use this particular clay. However, storing this clay will require a good storage box to protect it from dust and dirt. I'll now test the consistency of this clay. What I have with me is the number 7 yellow in the signature variant. This is a 120 gram package. By just pressing the block, I think I can already feel that this clay is of the softer variety. The package already mentions that it is of a medium soft consistency. So let's see how soft this particular clay is. The consistency definitely seems very soft. We might even have to leach it, I feel, at least for certain projects. But let's try to play with a small piece and see the true nature of this clay and how it feels in the hands. I can easily squish this clay with my fingers. If you see, I'm putting very less effort in this. It does feel like a perfect clay for satin slices or even clay paintings for that matter. I think blending techniques should also be effortless in this clay, and this is without leaching the clay. Being a softer clay, it is easy to condition. You can just use your bare hands to condition this clay in case you don't have a pasta machine and don't feel like investing in one just yet. But I will definitely have to leach it for most projects. I'll now try to leach the signature variant. Please note that leaching is a process where you blot out oils and plasticizers out of the clay to make it more manageable. So you're basically changing the composition of the clay by blotting out the plasticizers that make the binding material for the clay. Once you leach any clay, any brand, any variant, you will have to condition it once again. Even though this variant is very soft, it's not very sticky. So it makes me wonder if I should be leaching this at all. But let's do it anyway. When you leach your clay, try to make it as thin as possible for increasing the surface area of the leaching. I'll just use an acrylic roller this time because this clay is relatively soft and easy to work with. Don't worry about bubbles at this stage. We will be conditioning the clay and addressing the bubbles at that stage. I'm finding this clay very sturdy as compared to the classic series. It's not leaving any residue or fragments while I'm working with it, and yet it's very soft and malleable. So it's not leaving any color residue either. I'll now sandwich this very thin sheet between two sheets of printer paper. Please ensure there's nothing printed on these sheets or it will transfer onto your clay and dirty it. Now press the sandwich well and place some weight on it. You can put some books or anything heavy on top of this and leave it for 20 to 30 minutes. Keep checking after every 10 to 20 minutes so that the clay doesn't get over leached, because you can risk having a very brittle creation if you over leach your clay. So keep checking every 10 to 20 minutes and you will see an oily residue on the sheets once the leaching starts. Now while I leach a part of this sheet of the clay, let me see how this clay holds in a pasta machine as well, since we've not checked for that. We'll see if it shreds or wrinkles or faces any issues when it's going through the pasta machine rollers. Okay, so it's been passed through the thickest setting on my pasta machine. I think it's also time to clean my pasta machine. No point editing these parts out. Best if people see behind the scenes as well, right? I mean, always clean your pasta machine to avoid dirtying your clay, because you'll always get residue from the other colors and other clays that you have passed through it before you pass lighter colors. It's holding pretty well on the pasta machine. Let me try going up a notch on the thickness settings. Holding up pretty well. This is on setting number 4. It does tend to wrinkle, so as I said, the clay is definitely soft and it isn't the most ideal consistency for jewelry making, but tends to hold well otherwise. As I went up a notch on my pasta setting, this is how the clay behaved. So it's definitely a softer clay, and I think leaching might help you in handling this clay better. See, this is how it's behaving. I feel leaching might help me in making the conditioning process a little better. If I run it past through the same setting more than once, the creases seem to be lessening, but it doesn't hold up well when you go down on the thickness setting. It does tend to do that. So let me come back and see how the leached clay behaves when I try to condition it. I'll probably have to condition the entire batch of clay that I'm planning to test. So I'll be back once I leach this as well, and then come back and try to condition it again. So I leached my signature clay for about 45 minutes again. I have a feeling I might have over leached it, but let's see. It's become a lot more easy to handle, definitely, but we will still have to condition it a little. I'm not seeing any cracks forming in this, but I will still go ahead and see how it holds in the pasta machine. So you can see how the plasticizers, it hasn't let out too much plasticizer when I leached it. or even for 45 minutes. It's definitely leached lesser than the classic series, so I'll just see what impact this leaching has had on the clay and if it has become a little more easy to handle. It's not wrinkling now as we saw earlier. Got some residue from the previous clay that I tested. Just get rid of this. Yeah. See, it's not wrinkling as much and it's not giving any air bubbles. Oh, there's one air bubble. Still no air bubbles, which is a good sign. At least. So air bubbles is something that you can't really avoid most of the time. It's just that it shouldn't be too much. If it's a lot of air bubbles, it's definitely a matter of concern. But if it isn't, then you can definitely just pop them and put them through the pasta machine. After conditioning, it's not cracking, which is a good sign. That means the clay is properly conditioned already. It is not breaking or cracking anywhere, which is a good sign. It's still wrinkling a bit, but this can always be burnished. Now I'm seeing a few bubbles coming in place. This would be problematic if I take them as is. So I will try to get rid of as many air bubbles as possible. Another thing you can do to get rid of air bubbles is just stretch them out a little. So yeah, I think the clay is conditioned enough, but leaching did not quite make a huge change in the texture, except for the fact that it's become slightly more stronger. But I will now check how it stands in the heat in the oven now, as per the baking temperatures that have been given. So let's go and bake and see how this comes out after baking. Okay, so before I talk about how this variant performed in the oven, I'd like to talk about baking polymer clay just in general, because there are two things to keep in mind while baking. One is temperature and second is the surface on which you'll be baking. For temperature, investing in an oven thermometer is like the wisest decision when baking polymer clay, because most ovens, new or old, it doesn't matter how new it is, most of them are off on their temperature settings, which is like the most crucial factor for the chemical reaction to take place. The chemical reaction ensures that your clay cures properly. So the thermometer will actually help you set the exact temperature as per the brand guidelines. Each brand has its own temperature requirements, and this can prevent burning or probably even under baking of your pieces, which is one of the most common problems people complain about when they're baking polymer clay. And the second part of baking is to find a good surface to bake on. What I use is a glass slab that I got custom cut from a glass shop nearby. So you can also use a ceramic tile or even a steel plate. Just remember that if you bake clay directly on the slab or whatever surface you're using, you are bound to get shiny spots on the clay that faces down. So for avoiding this, you can put a sheet of plain printer paper to get smooth surfaces on your clay. Otherwise, you can get really ugly shiny spots and bubbles on the surface that touches the baking surface you put the clay on. Another thing that I use is a foil container that you usually get with your deliveries, food deliveries at home. You can buy like a bunch of these from Amazon, and I use that to cover my pieces while they are baking so that it regulates the temperature inside the foil container and ensures that the temperature is consistent throughout the baking time. So I baked the signature collection at 3 different variations of time and temperature. This is the signature collection, which bakes anywhere between 120 to 130 degrees centigrade. However, I took the higher limit of these of the clay the time prescribed and the temperature prescribed. So I baked this at 130 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes. So I'm assuming that a minus 5 degrees centigrade should not really affect the strength of this clay. But let's see, that's exactly what I'm here to check. One very good thing that happened, so if you notice, there is slight bubbling in these pieces. But that is because I probably did not bother to take out the bubbles from these pieces. I did not condition them well, so which is why this particular clay has shown bubbles. But and about the color variation, there's not much color variation from this clay, so I'll just show you the variation from the clay. If you look at the color variation, there's not much variation in the color. This is the piece that was baked at the exact prescribed temperature, and the color hasn't shifted a lot. There's barely any color change. Meanwhile, something that was baked at a lower temperature also obviously will not change its color. And the one that was baked at 5 degrees higher has a very slight variation from the original color, which was as expected, but I'm surprised that it did not shift more than this. So the colors have actually stuck to their original version and not shifted much from their original version. I'll now check the pieces for strength. I'm assuming that this is not going to break as easily, but let's just check. Oh, so clearly this particular clay needs to be baked a little more because it just snapped. It did not even flex much. It just broke into two. And I'm assuming this will also have the similar result because it's not got the exact amount of time. This also breaks at This was expected. I was not expecting this to not break. This had to crack because it's not got the right amount of time and temperature. I'm assuming this one will not crack. So let's see. Yes. So I have given this a higher temperature and a higher amount of time in the oven, and it did not. It's far more stronger than the other two pieces. So yeah, this did tend to crack a little, but it's still stronger than the other two variations. So I would suggest that if you are baking the signature oven baked polymer clay, bake it at a slightly higher temperature, say by 5 degrees. I would suggest not to go beyond that, and bake it for a good 1.5 hours. It will definitely cure, but the prescribed temperature does not work for the strength of this particular clay. One more important thing that we need to consider is that I had leached these pieces and then baked. Probably the strength could have been altered because I changed the composition through leaching. Since leaching did not make much of a difference in this particular clay, I would suggest not to go for leaching and just use the clay as is and then bake it. So let's revisit the pros of this variant. This variant has great opacity and shows absolutely no color change on baking, which is amazing. It's relatively easier to condition with just your hands and an acrylic roller. You don't need a pasta machine for this. It's soft but very manageable without leaching. You can completely work with this clay with your bare hands. I could see very few bubbles which were easy to remove while conditioning in this clay. So the cons of this variant are that it's a softer variety, which means that it's not meant for certain type of projects. You can't be making canes out of this. Packaging also, I feel, could be a little better from a storage perspective. The recommended temperature on the package does not work in curing this clay, so you will have to increase the temperature by at least 5 to 10 degrees centigrades. Increase the bake time also by 1.5 hours just to be safe. Also, no need to preheat the oven, just put your pieces in and start your oven and let the pieces cool inside the oven itself. So I hope this review was helpful. As they say, there's no bad clay. You're probably using it wrong and not for the intended purpose if it's not behaving the way you want it to. Hit like if this helped you in understanding the right projects for this particular variant. For more videos like this, you can subscribe to my channel Dilli Rouge Art or hit the bell icon down below for notifications on my next videos. Bye for now, enjoy claying.